Hello everyone, I'm here today to show you how to make a soft slab plate. The things you are going to need for today are a sponge, texture roller, smooth rib, serrated rib, scratch tool, a wood tool, and a pencil. The last thing you will also need is a styrofoam tray. This will act as our mold for our plate. Here I have a slab that I have prepped through the slab roller, and then I also stretched it out to about the same height as a pencil, so it's a little thinner than what would go through the slab roller. The first thing I want you to do is smooth out your slab. Make sure that there is no canvas texture, no texture from the table boards, and you want to get this smooth and nice and clean. The next thing I'm gonna do is I am gonna take my tray and I'm gonna flip it upside down so the rim is in the middle of my slab. I'm then going to take my pencil and lightly trace around my plate. And this is gonna be the surface of my plate, so the plate, the part that's facing up. Next thing you're gonna do is take a texture roller and you're gonna apply texture anywhere onto your plate that you wish. You can do the whole thing, you can do a strip, you can go across, 100% your choice. Since I did a vertical strip on this plate, I'm actually gonna do a horizontal strip. So I'm gonna take my roller and I am gonna gently press down and just turn it across my slab. Next, I'm gonna return my tray back to my slab. And this time I'm gonna use my scratch tool. I'm gonna use the X-Acto blade and I'm gonna cut all the way around my tray. I wanna make sure that my blade stays vertical up and down. Make sure you're not doing an undercut or a beveled cut, anything at an angle. Now, sometimes if you push down on the tray, it gets stuck. All you need to do is pop the corner and that will take it off. I use my tool instead of my finger. Next, you're gonna remove your extra clay. Now, sometimes the slab likes to stick to the table. I just use my rib and I will gently peel this back, making sure not to change the shape of my rectangle. Before you put your clay onto your styrofoam, you want to make sure that you have a piece of dry paper towel or saran wrap, something that's going to prevent it from sticking to the tray. So I just got some paper towel from our sink. Paper towel across my mold. I'm going to take my tray. I'm going to turn my slab upside down so the texture is hidden. The texture is on top of the paper towel. Next thing I want to do is make sure I have an even amount of clay on all sides. So I just kind of check with my fingers to see if there is more overhang on the right or the left. And then I'm going to gently press down with my hands and make sure that I have an even amount of clay all the way around my mold. And I want to press this to the mold very gently. I want to make sure that I'm not actually changing the shape or getting finger indents. And if it's off at any point and you realize I have more clay on one side or another, you can just scooch the paper towel over and that will drag your clay to the other side of the mold. If you get any type of little cracks, you want to take care of those right away. Otherwise they will come back. Another helpful tool that you might enjoy using right now is a paddle, and it will help paddle your plate to, or your clay to your mold and make it just a little bit easier to see. Again, I'm making sure that I'm not paddling hard enough to leave indents or corners since this is a rounded plate. So now I have the well of my plate made. the next step I need to do is make my foot ring. For this, you are gonna need, again, your serrated rib, you're gonna need a ruler, and you are going to need either a wooden sculpting tool or a pencil, and you will also need a coil. And you can get a coil from the extruder, or you can hand roll one depending on where you are. I have a extruded coil here. Before I put that on, I am going to make the ring for my foot. Now what I want is I want that ring to go just above where the hip of my plate is. So where it starts to curve up, I want that foot ring to sit right there. If I go too far in, my plate could slump. If I go too far over, I will not have a rim. I have found that I like taking my ruler and I inch it up to where the edge of the plate starts, and I just tip it over and I make a line. And I'm gonna go to the opposite side and do the same thing. So I'm gonna go where the hip is and I'm gonna tip that up, make a line. And I'm gonna do the same thing on my longer sides. So find where that curve starts, tip my ruler up, there we go. And what I'm gonna do is score just inside of this ring that I had. So I'm gonna score right in here, right along the inside of it. Okay. Now I wanna do the same thing to the coil that I have. I wanna make sure that I score that as well. So I'm gonna just take my coil and I'm gonna score the back side of my coil. Now I like to just do a little mist of water, a little bit of water from my sponge because my clay is really sticky. If your clay is stiff, you are welcome to get some slip and you can dot on some slip. Okay. I'm gonna start with my coil here on the wide edge of my plate. I wanna make sure that I'm keeping my foot ring the same shape as my plate. So since my plate is a rectangle, that means my foot ring should be a rectangle as well. Now when I get to the space where they start to overlap, I wanna make sure that I do a bevel cut and make sure those coils lay on top of each other. And they do, so I'm gonna give those a little score. Maybe a little miss because one side is dry. And I can bond those together. Now I like to make sure that this is nice and straight, so I'll use a paddle to line this up, gently push my coil down. And again, I just repeat and I go all the way around my foot ring. Now I've scored my foot ring into place, however, I still need to bond it. That means I need to make sure that I take some of my foot ring and I blend it into my plate, both on the exterior and on the interior, so that it stays nice and secure. The way that I like to do that is I use the flat part of my wood tool and I will grip a little bit of the clay and I just drag it down into the floor. And I treat it kind of like a little spatula. And I just take a little bit and I go all the way around on the interior as well as the exterior. When I get to the corners, sometimes that's a little trickier because it's round. I can flip my wood tool over and just use the little scoop side. But for the straight edges, I like the knife side of the wood tool. Okay. And then I'm gonna do just a quick little cleanup. Take my sponge. Make sure this is nice and smooth. I like using the paddle to help keep my foot ring in place so it doesn't get too wide while I'm putting a little bit of pressure on there. You could also use a ruler if you don't have a paddle. Okay, so I've done my inside. You can see there's no gap where we once had that coil line or little shadow. Everything's nice and smooth and bonded. Now I want to do the same thing to the outside of my plate. And then the last thing I want to do is take my sponge all the way around my plate. Make sure I don't have any stray marks that are undesired, no marks from my tools, no clay crumbs or little clay boogers. So I want to make sure I take this all the way around. Before you flip this plate over, you're gonna want to let it sit overnight in a Ziploc bag, no wet paper towel, and we want it to become leather hard. Once it's leather hard, we can flip it over and we can clean up the rim, making sure it's nice and round and even before we turn it in. All right, we'll let this rest overnight and then I'll show you what to do.